Hello, and welcome to Arden Wood. I'm John Mitchell, and I serve as Executive Director and CEO. Today's presentation is the last of 3 webinars focusing on key aspects of estate planning. If you missed either of the first 2 webinars with Ed Pearson, and wasn't he great? A replay of both is on our website under events on our homepage at ardenwood.org. You'll see a green box on the right-hand side that says previous event videos. Before we begin, I just want to tell you that you'll soon see a complete refresh of our website, which is a good place to find out about our services and to register for upcoming events. For instance, next Saturday, November 7th at 10 a.m. Pacific, we're hosting a Bible talk on the theme of water, given by Evan McDonald from the Principia. And then on the following 2 Thursdays, that would be November 12th and November 19th, we're offering 2 webinars on Medicare and healthcare options for Christian Scientists. As you know, October 15th through December 7th is the open enrollment period for Medicare. So these 2 webinars are quite timely. Our last event of the year is one of our finest and most favorite traditions, our annual Christmas celebration. It will be presented on Sunday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Pacific. We're looking forward to sharing a wonderful music program with you, for the first time entirely online. We hope you'll begin your Christmas season here with us. Arden Wood is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we wouldn't be here today without the loving generosity of countless Christian Scientists since 1930, when Arden Wood first opened. Donations account for nearly 35% of our operating budget, which supports our Christian Science nurses training program and all of our Christian Science nursing services, including skilled care, sheltered care, also known as assisted living, and our visiting Christian Science nursing service, which covers the greater San Francisco Bay Area. Now to the topic at hand. Putting an estate plan in place is wise and loving. It avoids unnecessary taxes, and it allows you to designate your personal possessions and assets to your loved ones and to organizations you believe in when you're no longer here. As you know, I love acrostics, that is, giving meaning to each letter in a word. For instance, I like to think of a plan as prayerful listening, acting now, which is exactly what we hope will be an incentive for you today. In this webinar, we're going to talk about different ways to include philanthropy in your estate plan, and why it's so helpful to let your loved ones know the reasons for the decisions you've made and what a difference that will make. And friends, to me, this is personal. I've seen this time and again, experienced it in my own family. When things aren't in order, when there's disorder or there's no plan in place, how challenging that can be to a family in personal relationships and organizational relationships. It's good to get it all worked out. To guide us through these topics, I am pleased to introduce an experienced estate planning professional and longtime friend of Arden Wood, Amanda Weitman. She will highlight the connection between personal values and giving through one's estate plan, as well as the importance of a legacy letter. Amanda is a wealth advisor for Wells Fargo, where she began her career in 1983, and she's worked there ever since. Amanda works with high net worth clients to effectively manage their wealth, first by identifying each client's unique goals, and then by coordinating a team of specialists to implement custom, comprehensive wealth plans to help accomplish these goals. Amanda graduated from Principia College, where she received her MBA from Golden Gate University here in San Francisco, and earned the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy designation from American College. Currently, she is working on a master's in philanthropy from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. Amanda is a native of Marin County, just over the Golden Gate Bridge, serves on several nonprofit boards, and is a member of the First Church of Christ Scientists, San Rafael. Before I turn the program over to Amanda, let me explain how you can ask questions. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see an icon that says Q&A. Click on it, and a screen will appear where you can type in a question. Please submit, then press submit, and it will arrive here. Please, once again, do not use the chat icon. We will collect your questions throughout the webinar and save them for the end of Amanda's presentation, when she will answer as many questions as we have time for. Please know that the information provided in these workshops is not intended to constitute legal advice. All content is for general informational and educational purposes only. Through the wonders of technology, we were able to record Amanda's presentation ahead of time because quite unexpectedly, she received a jury summons and is presently seated on a jury. In fact, depending on the court's timing today, she may be responding to questions over Zoom from her cell phone in her car. Please join me now in welcoming Amanda.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you. I'm just going to share my screen so you'll see me in the upper right-hand corner for most of the presentation, and then I'll be back for question and answers. So nice to be here with you. The last couple of weeks, we have covered estate planning, what it is, and who are the best people to help to help implement your estate and giving plans. Today, we're going to focus more on the qualitative side of planning. John mentioned that I work for Wells Fargo Private Bank. However, this is not a Wells Fargo presentation. As a donor and supporter of Arden Wood, I am sharing my experiences regarding how important it is to overlay what's valuable to you on top of your planning. So planning begins with values, and it helps define the why behind the decisions you make in your estate planning documents. As an aside here, I do want to say that it's important to work with an attorney who is an estate planning attorney. Just as if you were building a house, you wouldn't have your cabinet maker put the roof on. So when choosing an attorney, please make sure that you choose somebody who is specializing in estate work. Now, every plan needs to be legally sound and tax efficient, and that's why you have an attorney and an accountant working with you. But what makes the plan different from any other plan? It's you. So it's important to decide what matters to you and to overlay that on top of the legal and tax advice that you receive. So let's start with values. I know when I started this work, I couldn't have told you what my top 5 core values were. I could have come up with some important ones, but I don't know that I would have thought through it and said, these were my top 5. So it's important that if your values help frame decisions that you make, that you should see your values portrayed in your estate planning documents. Now, values could be one's judgment of what is important in life. It could be the importance or worth or usefulness of something. The true north that frames important decisions and actions, or you might call it your GPS for decision making. Your values can be molded during generational events. You can see that the matures and what the mature generation has gone through as compared to Gen Z and the different things that they have gone through. You may share values between generations, but they might be expressed differently. Individuals from the mature generation most likely have a different perspective than individuals from Gen Z. For example, if you experience the Great Depression, you may feel differently about money than those who are considered baby boomers. Let me give you an example of how the same value can be perceived and expressed differently. There was a family with a grandfather, a son, and a grandson, and they all had education as their top value, but they all wanted to express it a little differently. And the grandfather was not understanding what the grandson was wanting to do. So they invited in a consultant to kind of walk them through this. So the consultant asked the grandfather, how are you going to express education in your planning? And he said, I want to build a building for my alma mater and have our family name on it. Then the consultant asked the son, and how are you going to express your values in education? And he said, I would really like to fund scholarships so that people who couldn't otherwise afford to go to my alma mater will be able to. And then they turned to the grandson, and the grandson said, I want to make sure that clean water is available in villages in developing countries. And the grandfather was like, see, he doesn't understand. And the consultant asked the grandson, tell me more. Why is that important? How does that tie into education for you? And he said, children in developing countries spend most of their day gathering water and bringing it back to their village and to their home. We can build as many schools as we want, but if they don't have time to go to school, it doesn't make any difference. If we put clean water in their village, the children will have time to go to school. Now, the son and the grandfather now understood where the grandson was coming from. Values can also be expressed through sort of this technological innovation. And you can see what's happened over the 5 generations. Again, the mature generation, they saw television for the first time and frozen foods. And Gen Z, they grew up with a smartphone in their pocket. So everybody may communicate a little differently what their values are. Think US mail for the matures, email for the middle generations, and texting for the younger generations. It's important that as we meet with families, that we understand that the same values could be expressed differently or at different speeds than some other generations. So it's important to be able to identify and articulate our core values, because if you know them, they're going to be top of mind, and it helps you put them into practice every day, hopefully. Articulating our core values helps us to share what is meaningful to us and how we can pass it along. Let's look at a favorite Bible character and how he identified and articulated his core values. Now, Paul in 1 Corinthians shared all sorts of things that were sort of interesting and popular and important in the day. Eloquence and prophecy and generosity and hope and unselfishness. But he went through this process and he identified his top 3, which we all know are hope, faith, and charity. And then Paul, he knew that he had a number 1. And the greatest of these is charity. So now we get to go through this process as well. And we're going to choose our top 5 core values. This is a selection of values, but it certainly is not complete. If you don't see a value that's important to you, go ahead and write down the value that you think of. It doesn't have to be on this page. We're going to take about 3 minutes to pick our top 5 core values. So go ahead and do that, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. Okay, I know all of the values are good, so it's hard to narrow it down to just your top 5. But hopefully this was a helpful exercise to think through some of the values that drive your decision making. I know my top 5 are faith, community, honor, grace, and wisdom. Being virtual, we don't get the opportunity to share with each other. But if you're doing this exercise with somebody at home, after we're finished, take the time to share with them your top 5 core values and maybe where you have seen it play out in your life and why they're important to you. You can also look at the other person's top 5 core values and select a couple of them and share with that person where you see those values playing out in their experience. And maybe ask them between 2, which is a greater complement to them. I did this exercise with a group of men at San Quentin State Penitentiary. We were doing a workshop on values, philanthropy, and fundraising, since this was a group that was going to be raising money on the inside for a nonprofit organization on the outside that helps children whose parents are incarcerated with a mentorship program and summer camp. At first, I wondered if this exercise would be any different than working with my clients, and it wasn't. People are people. After we went through the exercise, one of the men shared that he now knew that when he went cell to cell asking for donations, he didn't have to use coercion anymore, that he could use compassion because he now knew it was one of his core values. Another man came up to me afterwards and shared that he did not know that he had core values, and he was so happy that he did, and that he was going to go back to his cell and think long and hard about the 5 core values that he selected. But he asked if he could share what his number 1 core value is. And I said, please share with me. I was dying to know. And he said it was forgiveness. And knowing some of the histories that some of these men have had growing up, I'm sure as much as he wanted to be forgiven for the crime that he committed, that there may have been some people in his lifetime that he needed to forgive because they hadn't treated him well when he was growing up. Now, what's important is of the values that you selected, do you see these in your planning? I met a woman and asked her when was the last time she had reviewed her planning documents. And she said she just had. She was a widow, and she felt like the documents had been created by her husband and the attorney. So she kind of felt like she inherited the estate planning documents. But when she said that she had them reviewed recently, I asked her, did she or the attorney have any comments about them? And she said, well, the attorney said that they will definitely stand up in court. And I said, but do those documents reflect you in any way? And she said, oh, no, not at all. So it's important that we make sure that those planning documents reflect you. So that's the question. Does your estate plan reflect your values? Are you transferring wealth consistent with what is important to you? And are you giving to charities that support your values? Let me give you an example of a family where they needed to realize that their planning was not supporting their values. So this was a family where they had 4 living generations, a great-grandmother, grandparents, children, and grandchildren. And in this family, although they were very wealthy, in this family, probably the number 1 value for them was a very strong work ethic. If somebody didn't work in the family business, they were off creating their own company or starting their own career. So work ethic was very, very important. So when we were working with the parents, we asked them, did they know what their parents and grandmother had done for their 2 boys? And they said they didn't because their family doesn't talk about money, which comes up a lot. So we gave them a little homework to do. They came back and they said that both their grandmother and their parents had left a substantial amount of money, or will be leaving a substantial amount of money to their two sons, such that at age 20, they would have mandatory income. And so we shared with the parents that the boys wouldn't have been out of college yet and probably would not have started a career yet, and yet they would have sufficient income to never work a day in their life. And they were mortified. And there wasn't much they could do about what their parents and grandmother had done, but it did allow them to change their planning so that their boys didn't end up with too much, which comes up a lot. It's a great question, is how much is too much to leave to a child? It's sort of the Warren Buffett approach. Leave them, some people feel like leave them enough to do something, but don't leave them too much to do nothing. But every family is different. So now that we've talked about the why, we're going to talk about how we want to give. These are considered the 5 T's of philanthropy. And actually the last one, thought, has been added on for this. And actually there are typically 4 T's of philanthropy. So time, so that you're volunteering time; talent, the skills that you can offer; treasure, which is the money; ties, which are your social connections; and particularly for this group, thought or prayer. These are all things that we can give. And we can give these to our family and friends as well as to charity. It doesn't really make a difference. When we voluntarily give for the betterment of humankind, not necessarily for family, that is called being a philanthropist. This term has been hijacked to mean giving large amounts of money, but the definition of philanthropy has nothing to do with money. If you break down the word, it actually means the love of humankind. Now, somebody that's very familiar to all of us was an amazing philanthropist. Tomlinson said of Mary Baker Eddy that she was a citizen of the world. She funded an electric car service, a new post office, a state library building. She paved streets. She helped rebuild Dartmouth Hall in honor of her brother. And she made sure that the school children had winter shoes. She donated to organizations like the New Hampshire Historical Society, the Young Men's Christian Association, police departments, San Francisco earthquake sufferers, and community events. She actually also donated to other churches who were in need of having a building rebuilt or a bell put into the bell tower. Issues that were of interest to her were slavery, temperance, prisons, and the military. But you don't have to be famous or rich to be a philanthropist. This group of men are philanthropists. They just happen to live at San Quentin. When I was in San Quentin and doing the workshop on philanthropy and fundraising and values, I asked the gentlemen, what does it mean to be a philanthropist? And they said rich people and people who are generous. And we talked about how we could broaden that with the 4 T's of philanthropy. And we talked about how they were spending their time going cell to cell to raise money for this organization on the outside. And we also talked about the talent that it took to put together the public service announcement that was going to play on the institutional channel that was going to highlight the fundraiser that they were going to do. So after we talked about that, I said, you know what that makes you, right? Blank stares, dead silence. I said, you are philanthropists, and you should have seen the looks on their faces. They had been redefined in the moment. And what I found so interesting was that they were philanthropists before they walked into that classroom that day. They just hadn't known it. One of the men blurted out, I am so happy that I am a philanthropist. I'm going back to my cell and I'm putting it up on my wall. I am a philanthropist. We should all have that same level of enthusiasm, really realizing that we can give of our time, talent, treasure, ties, and thought voluntarily to benefit society. Now, who can we give to? You pretty much have three choices. You can give to people, you can give to charities, and you can give to the government. Now, most people like to try and minimize what is given to the government, which is one of the reasons for estate and tax planning. Many people feel like family comes first before they give to charity, which is completely understandable. But once you get past the lifetime estate tax exemption and you can't give to family tax-free anymore, then the decision is really not between individuals and charities, but between charities and government. And when you have that choice, many people now consider themselves to be charitable. Now, what and how can you give to individuals? So everybody's probably aware that there's an annual exclusion that you can give to anybody, and as many people, $15,000 per person. And the IRS does not consider that a taxable gift. You also have a lifetime exemption of $11,580,000, as Ed Pearson had talked about in the first or second session that we had. And that's almost 23 million for a couple. Now that's going to change the way that the law is written at the end of 2025. However, if we have a new president in the White House come January, Mr. Biden has said that he would like to lower that amount to 3.5 million. So if you are in the situation where you individually have more than 11.5 million or 23 million as a couple and could comfortably gift some assets now, you may want to talk with your estate planning attorney. And they are already starting to get busy. So I would do that sooner than later if possible. Depending on how, what, and when you want to give, your estate planning attorney will likely find a way for you to do this. So just discuss it with them and just tell them what you're trying to accomplish. You don't need to know what the answer is. You just need to be able to explain to them what you're trying to accomplish. For example, you might say that you would like to leave money to children where they have income for a period during their lifetimes, but you don't really want them to have access to the principal unless it's for something like a new house purchase or starting a company or going to school. And you don't want them to technically own it, because if they got involved in a lawsuit or a divorce, you wouldn't want half of your money or more to go to strangers. If you explain that to your estate planning attorney, they will have an answer for you and will know how to structure that gift. So then you can ask, what and how can we give to charity? So you can pretty much give whatever you want to charity, but you need to check with the charity to see if they will accept it. Most nonprofits have a gift acceptance policy that will say what they're willing to accept. So you can give cash, which a lot of people do. You also want to be able, or you can give low-cost basis stock or real estate or other appreciated assets like businesses. This is one of the most tax efficient gifts versus giving cash. Because if you have an asset that you say that you want to give to a charity, but you need to sell it first, and you sell it, you will have to pay a capital gains tax on the difference between the cost and the value. And then you could give the net difference to the organization. But if you gave the actual appreciated asset directly to the nonprofit, because they don't pay income tax, they would keep 100% of the sales proceeds. So here's an example. If you bought a share of Coca-Cola stock for $5 and now it's worth $100, if you sold it, you would have to pay tax on $95, the $100 minus the $5, which would be around $19. And then you could give the $81 to the charity. But if you actually gave the one share of Coca-Cola stock to the charity and it was still valued at $100 when they received it, they could sell it and they would receive $100. Because again, they're not going to pay any income tax. Ed had mentioned that there are new rules regarding the retirement accounts, sort of the stretch IRAs, and that those time periods have been shortened. There are ways to extend that in sort of creative ways, and I would talk with your estate planning attorney. One example is that you can name a charitable remainder trust as the beneficiary of the retirement account, which would then allow you to have a period of time where income was paid, and then the corpus would go to the charity at the end of a time period. You can always just name a beneficiary that's a nonprofit as the beneficiary for a retirement account. This also tends to be fairly tax efficient because an individual that receives a retirement account, there will be income tax and estate tax. And yet if it goes directly to the charity, those will be avoided, or you actually get a credit against those. But in effect, those are avoided. So if your family does not need your retirement account and you're thinking about giving to charity, naming a charity a beneficiary of your retirement account is something to consider. Then there's a donor advised fund, which is an account created at a sponsoring entity that is considered a 501c3 public charity. Many different organizations offer donor advised funds. For example, community foundations in your local communities offer donor advised funds. And then you also see national sponsors like Fidelity and Schwab and Vanguard and National Philanthropic Trust, where you can also open a donor advised fund with them. One of the great benefits of a donor advised fund is the ability to give that low cost basis stock to the donor advised fund. The donor advised fund can sell it and give you a diversified portfolio, and you don't have to give that money away right away. There's a lot of popular talk that donor advised funds need to have more scrutiny and guidance on when it gets paid out. But as it stands today, if you put money into a donor advised fund, there is no minimum requirement to pay out at any time. A charitable remainder trust, sort of in lay persons, is the ability, if you wanted to give an asset to a charity, but you didn't want to do it right away because you needed the income from that asset, a charitable remainder trust allows you to give away the asset irrevocably and retain an income stream for a set period of time. And then at the end of that, the remainder of the trust would go to charity. Now, if you have family members who are saying like, wait, don't give away all your assets to charity, there's something called a charitable lead trust, which is sort of the opposite, which is you set up this irrevocable trust and the income from that trust goes to the charity, and then the corpus at the end, at the end of a certain period of time, would go back to your beneficiaries. A private foundation is another entity that can be opened, and a private foundation can provide you more flexibility on where money can be distributed. Typically, it's higher amounts because there are some costs associated with opening a private foundation, but they are also more closely scrutinized and regulated and taxed than public charities, and you do have a 5% minimum requirement to distribute each year. And a supporting organization is one more type of organization. It is considered a public charity because it is created to specifically support another public charity or the charitable activities of other charitable organizations. So we've covered why we give, how we give, what we give, and who we give to. So now let's shift to when and how to share your intentions. The timing isn't as important as actually sharing the why behind your giving at some point. It's so helpful for family harmony and for nonprofits who receive your gifts. Family harmony can be challenged when both parents have passed away. Providing an explanation on why you made the decisions you did may not get rid of any disappointment, but it definitely shifts that disappointment or the emotions away from the surviving siblings, which tends to maintain family harmony. And there are many nonprofits who have received wonderful gifts and wonder who in the world is this person and how did we not know about them? So providing some context as to why you chose the organization can help them appreciate and honor your gift. And you can do this through a legacy letter or a donor intent letter. A legacy letter, donor intent letter are not legal documents. They are just sharing the why behind all the decisions you made in your legal documents. Here are some of the reasons you might write a letter to share your thoughts about your gifts. To express your love and gratitude, to express what's important to you, to share some of your own history, to share something of what you've learned in life and why it was important to you, to provide some family history. There's actually a study that was done that said that individuals tend to be more resilient if they understand their family history, both the successes and the failures of their ancestors. You might want to be explaining some elements of your estate plan, why you made one decision versus another. You may also want to share your vision for a trust or a philanthropic instrument, or to tell stories behind the assets that you're giving. And this is actually kind of fun, to identify a specific thing that you would like to give to somebody, and then write about why you connected the two of those things. My mom gave me something called a loving cup, which looks like a silver trophy with handles. And it's inscribed about my great-grandfather. And she gave it to me. My grandfather ran the Orpheum Theater Company in Los Angeles. And in the day, W.C. Fields wrote in an article that my grandfather put the business into show business. So now that it's mine, I have a choice as to who I want to give it to. And I've already decided that it's going to my daughter. She graduated from college a couple of years ago as a business major, but she's also pursuing a degree in the theater. So she's this perfect combination of business and theater, which just seemed perfect for her to have. And I've already written a little letter explaining why it is that she will have that. So have some fun with this. What you write actually could end up being more valuable than the thing that you have selected. There are lots of resources on how to write a legacy letter or ethical will and a donor intent letter. This information came from Susan Turnbull, who founded Personal Legacy Advisors. You can access her workbooks online at personallegacyadvisors.com. So thank you so much for for being with us here today. Let's just summarize what we've talked about. It's important to start with your values and let them guide your planning. Giving includes not only money, but time, talent, ties, and thought. Your plan will include giving to individuals, charities, and the government, and it's up to you who gets what. And as John has said before, if you don't have a plan, the state in which you live with will create a plan for you. Share with your estate planning attorney what you're trying to accomplish based on what's important to you, and they will find the right structure for your gift. And share your intentions now or later, just do it at some point, describing the why behind your decisions so that your beneficiaries understand why you made the decisions that you did. Thank you so much again for spending time with us today. And John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Before we go to questions, we'd like to take a quick online poll like we've done in the two previous webinars. There will be 2 questions and you'll see a box appear on your screen. There it is. So please answer the 2 questions and we'll give you the results in a moment. Okay, we'll now close the poll. Here we go. Let's see. So those who have, when's the last time you reviewed your estate plan? 1 year ago is 26%, 5 to 10 years ago, 29%, 10 or more years, 20%. I don't have an estate plan, 26%. Let's see if we can bring that one down quite a bit. Are you inspired to write a legacy letter? Yes, 69%. Yay! Isn't that wonderful? No, 9%. Undecided or still thinking about it, 23%, or already have one. Not one person has one. Isn't that great? What a good thing to go through here. And now we get to see Amanda in person. Hello. The ideas you shared today have been very helpful, Amanda. And just so good to see you. And I hope the jury service is going well. We've all been there. Yeah. So now to our questions. We just have a couple. And if you have questions, folks, please send them in. We just have 2 so far. I'll read the first one. Suppose a husband and wife complete the Choose 5 Values exercise, which is so cool. And each comes up with 5 different values. Do you recommend they work with 10 values or that they work them down to 5 values when guiding their estate planning?
That is such a great question. So thank you, whoever asked that. 10 is a lot, but if you can manage 10, that's great. It's interesting when you start talking about the different values, you may find that you're calling something one thing versus another, but that you can actually, when you get to have that conversation with each other, you realize that one of yours was sort of more like one of the others. And so you could probably narrow it down a bit. If you can't, then you can work with 10. And you may not have all 10 in your, reflected in your estate documents either. It just may not be practical, but at least maybe you can get sort of your top, maybe you can rank those 10 and see if you can come up with a top 5 that you could work with for your documents.
Great. Second question. Now this one is a question that we also received last week. And here it is. What effect does ROE, or revocation of election to pay IRS taxes, have on beneficiaries? Is there a beneficiary ROE and giver ROE, a revocation of election to pay
So my answer is the
census?
same as Ed. I don't know what ROE as a revocation of election is. Yeah, so I can't answer that question. I'm not sure if the person asking the question has a little more information about that, as to maybe we know what it is, but we're just not used to calling it that.
Okay. And next question is there any way to get the slides that you presented in your slide deck? And the answer is yes. We will email the slides to you, and you'll be able to see them again on the replay of our website tomorrow. So just asked and answered, as they say in your jury service.
Right. I've heard that already.
Right. So do we, one more question coming in. Let me just go to the Q&A here. And I go to the bottom. I just read that one about, just a second. Here we go. I am using a charitable gift annuity for some of my estate. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so, as in any kind of a vehicle, it needs to be right for you, right? So you want to look at all the different reasons why. It gives you that income stream, which is great, with then the corpus going to the charity. So if that income stream is something that is meeting your needs, the return for you is good. There are lots of organizations that provide gift annuities, and they're beneficial for both parties if it's right. If you've already established them, then my guess is they were right for you at the time that they were set up. But they are popular, and it's sort of a win-win, I think.
Great. Next question. We need to update our trust, over 10 years old now, but would like to use another estate planning attorney. What's a good way to find or choose an estate planning attorney?
Another great question. If you work with a financial advisor, they probably can provide you 3. They're always going to recommend more than one, because they can't be looking like they're choosing one over another. So typically we offer 3. We typically will ask questions about what you're looking for. So do you want one that's near your home? These days it doesn't make that much difference. You definitely want one within your state. So choose an estate planning attorney that knows the state that you're living in, the laws of that state. And then you want to look at how sort of complicated or sophisticated your plan is. And because you don't want to pay a lot of money for somebody who does really sophisticated plans and yours is more plain vanilla. So you really want to match that up. So when you're sharing with a financial advisor or somebody, I would give that information to say, this is what I'm looking for. Even if you have a preference between gender, some people do. I want a man over a woman, or, I want somebody, a lot of people will say, I want somebody who's going to live longer than me, right? So you might go on age as well. If your financial advisor doesn't have any recommendations, you can always go to friends and see who they have used. If the person who's asking this question is in California, I can get some recommendations for you as well, depending on where you are in California. I can talk to my peers if you're not in the Bay Area. And if you are in the Bay Area, John, I think you guys actually have a list of some estate planning attorneys in the area.
We do. Great, that's what we do as well. We never suggest one. We give a few, and then people can choose on their own.
Yeah, and I would just say, I would then interview them to make sure that there's something you want to work with.
Absolutely. And like you said, I loved what you said in your presentation, Amanda, get a professional. I've seen where people have used you know, there sometimes is a reticence to pay for an attorney, but you get what you pay for, as they say. And I've seen where you have a general practice attorney doing an estate plan, and then the whole thing has to be reformed. And it's so much easier and better to have someone who does this for their work, like someone like Ed or another person who really knows what they're talking about and really is keeping up with the law. Next question. How do I know if I'll have anything to give after expenses related to end-of-life issues?
Oh, that's a good question too. Your financial advisor should be able to help you sort of, you know, look at your current plan, look at your assets that you have now, and they can project out what are the costs for end of life, and what gifts you already know that you might want to give to children or, you know, anything. And then you kind of see if you have anything left over. So that's a way to do it if you want to give while living, right? That's sort of a kind of a new thing, is you see that with the very large philanthropists of giving while living. But you can always wait as well. And you can put into your documents, you know, if there's something left, I want X person or charity to receive it. But it is important to make sure that you have worked with a financial advisor to plan that you do have enough for the rest of your life. That's really, really important. So again, if you haven't done that yet, I highly would recommend working with a financial advisor at a bank, or, you know, whoever you want to use. But make sure that they've done that planning with you, partly just to give you peace of mind that you know you have enough. But then it also allows you to start planning.
What happened? There we go.
And know that you could give while you're living, or that you definitely will have something to give when you pass away.
Perfect, thank you. Next question. Please remind us once again the website for Personal Legacy.
Yes, Personal Legacy Advisors, so ADVISORS.com. And her workbooks are great, and she has both the legacy letter and the donor intent letter workbooks available.
Excellent. We're coming back around the track again on ROE. IRS taxes are voluntary. Congress has established provision to ROE. Revoke your election to pay taxes. I'm not familiar with that, but.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, because I didn't know that taxes were voluntary.
Next question. How would we request the list of estate planning attorneys from Arden Wood? Well, you could just send me an email, and I think we're going to have on our screen, we'll have Amanda's contact information as well as my own here. And we'll get that list to you. Thank you. Can Arden Wood suggest an estate planning attorney in California to work with me in another state? Good question. Have to explore that a little bit, because states are different, as Ed highlighted in his remarks. Would you have anything to say to that at all, Amanda?
Yeah, if somebody wants to contact me, I have peers in every state. And so again, I would probably just ask you a few questions about what you're looking for, and then I can get some names from one of my peers.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda. Great. Someone's just saying thank you for a most informative webinar. Well, that's great. That's all the questions that we have. We're coming up to the end of the hour here. Let me just move this. And so, Amanda, thank you again. You know, we're delighted for everything. And just as I say, this is so important. You know, about half of people in the United States have an estate plan, and just the chaos that can be avoided and the hard feelings. And as I say, it was one of the events in my life, happened in 1968, January of 1968. And we've still, that has harmed our family. And I want to see everybody have a plan, because it also, and for my work at Arden Wood, of course, we want people to support Arden Wood through their estate. That's my job. And we want people to support our healing mission. But the most important thing, I think, as well, other than our own interests here, is how we want to support our families and the things that we loved as we started off with. What are the charities you want to support that you've loved your whole life? Who are the people that you've loved your whole life, the friends that you've had, the family members that you have, all those things, to think them through and not leave it to someone else or the state. We are delighted to present these informational webinars, and we encourage you to invite a family member or friend to join us for future events. We hope to see you next Saturday for Evan McDonald's Bible Talk. Amanda, thank you again, and thank you all for joining us today, and goodbye for now.